Good morning, beautiful wives. I hope you're doing amazing. We are back for another dare with our Respect Dare 40 days to a deeper connection with God and with your husband. So, we are right now on dare number 13, and it's called the play set. Proverbs 31:27 says, "She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness." And it goes on to talk about a story of this wife that was very busy at the house, and the baby finally fell asleep, the boys are playing, and she finally thinks, okay, I'm gonna get a rest, right? I'm gonna put my feet up and whatnot. And when she starts listening to the radio, it tells that the weekend is gonna rain and whatever, and she remembers that she had told her husband she was gonna paint the playset. And she made the choice of getting up and going outside with the boys, taking the baby monitor, painting the playset outside, and she spent 2 hours doing that. And her husband came home and he was pleased. He was happy with what she had done, because he wanted for them to be able to relax over the weekend instead of having to be thinking about it, right? And what she says is that she I'm going to read it to you guys, and it's right on the end of it. Megan realized that she had demonstrated respect for her husband in front of her kids, modeling for them something very important. She also realized that she had shown him love in a very tangible way. The opportunity would have been missed would she have stayed in the couch. Bottom line, God helps us in our relationships, but only when we listen to his still soft voice. Choose to listen, and your family will benefit from it. And I think that there is a very big difference between us living a busy life or doing the things that God has asked us to do from a place of rest, right? And I think that a lot of times we don't do the things that God has asked for us to do because we are so busy doing the things that He never asked. We consume ourselves with 100 million things, and none of those things are the ones that really matter. So after the three questions, the "so what about you," she goes on to say, "Here is your dare for today. Take 15 minutes to prayerfully evaluate the activities in which you are involved. Ask God to reveal which ones He has chosen for you and which ones you shouldn't be doing at all. Figure out how to uncommit yourself if possible, and contact the people involved. Let them know when your involvement will end. Today and in the following days, begin the habit of asking your husband on a daily basis one thing you can do for him. Then do it." I remember when I did this the first couple of times, that I would ask my husband, like, "What can I do for you today?" And he would be so amazed, and he was like, "What do you mean? What you can do for me?" I'm like, "Yeah, what can I do for you today?" And I did that for a while and then didn't anymore, right? But some of the things that he would ask me to do for him were such simple things, and he would sometimes ask the same thing every day. So some of those things I still do, without even asking, just because I know it pleases him and I know that he likes for me to do them for him. But I often did, like, was in the habit of asking for a while and then not anymore, right? And I think that the challenge is to be consistent, right? And perhaps it's not really the consistency of asking every day, although that's a good idea, but the consistency of paying attention to their needs, right? And doing it from a place of love, doing it without grumbling, doing it without thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm so busy, I don't have time for this," or whatever the situation might be. last month, October, we did a little workshop, which was the boundary workshop. And on the third day, I talked about protecting our yes. And I think that that is a great way to put it, you know. And I was even talking to some of the couples last night that my husband and I co-lead in a life group, and we were talking about the protecting your yes. You know, our number one yes is to God, right? Above everything else, above anyone else, and that's it, right? Then our next yes is to our husbands. You know, that is the order of things. And when we have order, the number one boundary that God established on earth as soon as he created earth was order, right? So when we have order in our lives, we are able to say yes to things instead of just having to think what are all the things we have to say no to, you know, which for me is much easier because I'm not a fan of saying no, you know. So if I have to say no to 100 things, for sure I'm gonna be overwhelmed, you know. But if I'm only saying one to one thing and everything else is just a consequence of me protecting this one yes, then for me that's a much easier deal, you know. So anyways, we were talking about it. So number one in order of priorities is God, and then our husbands, right? And then of course our children, our family, and everything else, depending on each person and the things that are in your life. But my point is that how do we protect this yes in this season, you know? So I would like to add this to your dare today, you know, that you would spend some time with God thinking about it. So how do we protect our yes to God in the season that we are in? What does that look like? Does that look 5 minutes in the morning reading the verse of the day and meditating on it? Does that look like praying for 5 hours? Does that look like reading the Bible for 24 hours? Whatever that looks like, you know, whatever is realistic to you in the moment that you're living in and in the season that you are in. You know, some of us have small children, and it looks different than, you know, others of us who don't have small children and have more time and flexibility, you know. So it's really between you and God, but figure out what is the order of priority to which you are saying yes to, you know. And by doing the dare that she suggested, take 15 minutes to prayerfully evaluate the activities that you are involved and allow God to reveal to you which ones he has chosen for you and which ones he has not. So by doing that, it will already have the list done for you, right? But perhaps you didn't have your husband there, you know, on the list, because you're just writing down the things you have to do versus the things you have said yes to, you know. So anyways, then ask him, God, what does my yes to you look like in this season? You know, what am I supposed to commit to? You know, is it reading a chapter a day? Is it studying just one verse and meditating? It doesn't matter what it is, you know. Maybe it's just the time, you know. For me, it's more about the time that I spend with him than what it is that we're doing, because it's not really ever the same, right? So what is it that you are committing to that yes in the season, you know, that doesn't overwhelm you, that it's realistic to what you are living in, and yet it takes heart to protect it, you know, because things we will want to get in the way, you know, of your yes. So your next yes is to your husband. What does it look like in this season for you? What does that yes look like in this season for you? Does that make sense? Because, for instance, there was a point in time in our lives that we weren't even aware of that yes, you know, and we got into very deep trouble, you know. But right now, because we're so aware of that yes, our yes involves a lot of things. You know, it involves us spending time each day together. It involves us asking each other about each other's days on a daily basis. It involves a lot of conversations every day. It involves some depth, and it involves a lot of prayer, and it involves us doing devotionals together, and it involves a weekly date night, and there is a lot involved in our yes to each other right now, because of what we have lived in the past and the disconnection that it has brought to our marriage, you know. So we are in a season of extreme, you know, when it comes to our marriage. Will it always be like that? I don't know, but that's what it looks like right now, you know? So that means that I'm saying no automatically to a lot more things and a lot more people than I used to, because I am dedicating so much more to my husband and my marriage. Does that make sense? And again, I'm not saying that's the case for everyone, right? But what I am saying is that you need to figure out what is your case, you know? Because if we are not intentional about protecting our yes to our husbands and to our marriages, then everything else will consume us and keep us busy versus productive, you know. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys today, and I wanted to encourage you to understand, what does your yes look like in this season to your husband in your marriage, you know. I'm gonna post the link for the boundary class, the boundary workshop that I did last month, just in case any of you guys are curious about it. And again, I really encourage you to figure out what your yes to your husband in your marriage look like in this season. Communicate it with him, have a conversation with him, you know, because everything else will be a no by default, you know, and you don't have to think of all the things you're saying no to. All right, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. I will see you tomorrow.